Hello all, a great evening to one and all present and who are watching this particular video. Welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So this is Sureka Bhaskar here to present the daily news analysis where we've actually picked up very important articles from both the reputed dailies of The Hindu as well as the Indian Express that become extremely important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. So before we get into the topics or have a look at the topics that we've actually picked up for discussion, let us see our daily dose of motivation. So what does it actually say here? It always seems impossible until it's done. Yes, such a powerful as well as a a very deep thoughtful quote which had been given by a prominent political leader, that is the first black president of South Africa from the period of 1994 to 1999. Okay, so he is Mr. Nelson Mandela. So what did he say is that anything doesn't actually come easy. Okay, so you have to get into it, and with your persistent and consistent effort you will actually have to try it. Okay, so it will always seem impossible until you do it and you actually set the standard for others to follow. Okay, so even if you take his case, he had actually spent around 27 years in prison fighting against apartheid in South Africa. Okay, and also many other things that actually seemed extremely impossible. For example, ending colonialism, for example, our mission to the space. Next one is bringing or putting an end to any kind of a disease. All these once seemed impossible, but today look at the advancements that we mankind have actually done. So having said that, this applies to our UPSC preparation as well. Okay, so you do it, get there and set example for people to actually follow your path. Okay, so having said this, let's move to the articles that we will be discussing for today's DNA. That is, the first article has been picked up from page number 7 of the Hindu. So here there has been a recent remittances survey, that is 6th round of the survey that has been released by the Reserve Bank of India. Okay, so here this actually talks about the concept of remittances. Okay, so how have the remittances actually been, and the major observation or the takeaway from this particular survey or the report is that the United States I'm sorry. The major takeaway from this particular survey is that the United States and other developed or advanced nations have actually surpassed the Gulf nations as being the source of remittances for India. Okay, so United States actually tops the list, and following that you have other countries. Okay, so this is what we'll be understanding. So for that you need to understand the concept of remittances. Okay, so whether remittances actually come under capital account or they fall under the current account is what you need to understand. Capital account or current account, and however both of this falls under the balance of payment. So here we will understand the concept of balance of payment and how it has actually classified into two or categorized these accounts, that is the capital account and the current account, and what are the different other components that actually fall into each category. Okay, so this will be a mains based article. Next, moving forward, the second article has been picked up from page number 8 of the Hindu, that is Lokpal gives clean chit to Madhabi Buch in Hindenburg case. So here don't get confused by these names and all. Actually what happened, there was a report that had been published by the US short seller. We'll discuss about what is a short seller. That is, Hindenburg had come out with a report that Adani groups, okay, who are a group of companies over here in infrastructure, energy, etc., they are manipulating the stock market. So what is the role of the regulator of stock markets in India? That is SEBI. But then they actually found out, or there were many complaints that actually that were raised against who? The chairperson or the former chairperson of Security and Exchange Board of India. Okay, So that is where the complaints were actually raised to the Lokpal, and that is where we will be discussing about this particular body, that is Lokpal. Also a very important question, and it came in your 2025 preliminary examination as well. You need to know who can be the chairperson, you need to know who are the members of the selection committee and what is their tenure, whether they are eligible for reappointment or not. All that we will be discussing here. Okay. Next one is your third article. So this is basically your prelims article, and the third article is from the text and context page. That is, how has Supreme Court deviated from the POCSO in a recent judgment? Okay, so here we will be discussing about what is the importance of this POCSO Act and what are the provisions it actually entails with respect to that of sexual abuse or harassment of children. So what is the definition of minor, or what is the definition of child? What is the definition of abuse under this particular act? When did it come into existence? All that we will be discussing here. Then moving forward, the final article has been picked up from text and context page of the Hindu, that is the third page, the importance of deputy speaker. So if you notice, the 17th as well as the 18th Lok Sabha have actually failed from appointing the deputy speaker to its office. So this is where we need to understand how important or how significant is the role of deputy speaker in our parliamentary democracy. Okay, so here we will be discussing about the office of deputy speaker, and hence this is also going to be a prelims article, and towards the end we will solve a mains practice questions with respect to that of remittances. Following that, we will solve the MCQs which are related to the topics that we dealt with yesterday, and moving forward we will see the MCQs that have been framed for the topics that we'll be discussing today. Okay, so let's move forward to the very first article, that is examining the RBI's remittances survey. So this is nothing but the sixth round of survey, that is 2023 to 2024. Okay, so here what is important, you need to understand the trends in the flow of remittances into India, from where India actually has the most maximum remittances or the most inflow of remittances, that is the United States, which has actually surpassed other Arab nations. Earlier it used to be UAE. Okay, so now it is United States. And then we'll also understand the concept of balance of payments, and this particular topic is important for both your prelims as well as your mains examination under GS paper 3, effects of liberalization on the economy, growth and development. So even if you see in the 2025 examination, various concepts, that is numbers, were given in order to check you understand the concept or not. Okay, so the concept of primary deficit was given. Okay, so fiscal deficit was the concept you need to understand there, whether you have to subtract the interest payments or not to deduce to the primary deficit, what is going to be the expenditure or capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, all had been asked in your exam. So similarly, if you see in 2013 also, the same capital account was actually asked. Okay, so which of the following constitute the capital account? So you need to know where do the private remittances actually fit into, whether it is capital account or the current account. Okay, so now let's actually move forward and see why this particular topic has been in the news. So as I told you, the Reserve Bank of India's sixth round of survey, remittance survey of 2023-2024, has observed that the United States plus the other advanced countries have actually surpassed the Gulf nations as the largest sources of remittances into India. And why this has happened? Because of two major changes. One is about the global labor laws or the patterns. Okay, there are a lot of stringent laws specifically after the COVID pandemic that was actually put in force. And the next one was the structural shift in the migration. What is it? Structural shift in migration. Okay, so these were the two important reasons for US actually surpassing the other countries. Okay, so now let us actually move forward to see what is the concept of remittances. Remittances is nothing but the amount of money that is sent by the workforce or the people who are actually staying abroad to the people who are dependent on them over here in their motherland or in India. Okay, so money sent by the people working abroad to the families in their home country. Typically, through how does it happen? It actually gets deposited in the bank or by money transfer services or through the digital platforms through any kind of apps. Okay. Next one, these are non-debt creating capital flows. Just because remittances come here, do they create any kind of liability or debt for the country? No, it is just a capital inflow. So these are non-debt creating capital inflows, and it also plays a vital component of the BOP. This is nothing but balance of payment. So what do you mean by balance of payment? It is the economic transaction that actually happens between India and the rest of the world. Okay, and again, this balance of payment can be categorized into two. One is your current account. And next is your capital account. Okay, so what is current account? This is nothing but it is your transaction that actually happens on a day-to-day basis. Okay, like for example, your merchandise is nothing but your exports in goods, etc., or it can also be your invisibles, etc. Okay, and then you have the capital account. This is the inflows like the FDI, foreign direct investment, then the FPI, foreign portfolio investment. You also have ECBs. This is nothing but external commercial borrowings that India takes from other countries, and also you will have NRI deposits over here. These are long term basically. Okay, so these are short term or day-to-day transactions, and the capital are what? The capital account is the long-term transactions that actually takes place. Okay, so this is what you need to understand. Now let's clearly see the classification of balance of payment. Okay, so this is balance of payment, and I already discussed what is balance of payment. It is the economic transaction that actually happens between India and the rest of the world. Okay, so this is what it is classified into: current account as well as capital account. What is current account? This is nothing but your day-to-day transactions that actually happens. It can be either exports and imports of goods, that is what is merchandise. The next one is actually invisibles. What do you mean by invisibles? These can be services, okay, which are not tangible. These are not goods. Okay, so that is why these are called invisibles. They can actually be the services, like it can be your IT, it can be your telecom, okay, and then it can be even your investment income, like the profit, and it can be the interest that you are actually receiving. All that can be a part of your invisibles. Okay, so this is actually your current account, which is divided into merchandise and invisibles, where invisibles is further divided into services. What is services? It is the banking services or the telecom services or the IT services India actually gives to the other countries. Or it can be factor income, the income that is actually earned on the factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, as well as entrepreneurship. Okay, so what do you mean by that? Investment income, either in terms of profit, interest, dividend, as well as all these which you get on the assets that you possess from abroad. Okay, so this is what is your factor income, and also has employee compensation. And also the next kind of invisible is the transfer. In case if you are given grants, that is the aid that you receive from any of the country, or here is the remittances that the people working abroad send to their country or their family. So here only you have remittances. So under what? It falls under current account, under invisibles, under transfers. Okay, so this is the classification of BOP into current account. Now let's go to the capital account. As I told you, these are the long-term investments. Okay, long-term investments, and here what do you mean by foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. Okay, and also the loan that India actually gets from abroad. So the loan is what? It is termed as the external commercial borrowing. External commercial borrowing, and also the banking capital, the amount of money that is present in the banks because of what? The NRIs depositing there. Okay, so this is what is the classification of BOP into current account and capital account, where remittances follow under the transfer category under invisibles. Okay, so this is what is your BOP. Now moving forward, let us see what has been the key trends in the remittances and what have been the factors behind US actually surpassing the other countries. First one, record high inflows. Okay, so inward remittances have been extremely high. That you see over the past few years, what happens? India's remittances actually touched an all-time high of around or above $115 billion. Okay, so this is actually highest, and this has been more than double since the 2011 levels. Okay, next one, top 5 source countries. The first one, US, where 27% of the remittances come from there, and then you have the other Gulf countries, like you have the UAE, you have UK, Saudi Arabia, as well as Singapore. Next one, there has been a trend shift. Okay, so earlier these countries that belong to the Gulf Corporation Council, Gulf Corporation Council. So this is nothing but it is an intergovernmental political as well as economic grouping. Okay, it is regional also, which consists of the countries which are present in this Persian Gulf region. Okay, so it actually consists of Qatar, it has your Oman, and then it has Bahrain, and then you have your UAE also present, you have the Kuwait, you have Saudi Arabia. All these countries are part of this particular GCC. Okay, so earlier there were Gulf nations like UAE and Saudi Arabia which were dominant, which now has reduced to around only 38% combined. Okay, so even on a combined note, they are only 38% of the remittances, while the advanced nations actually contribute to around 50% of the inflows. Okay, next one, top 3 recipient states. First one is Maharashtra, and that is followed by Kerala as well as Tamil Nadu. The next one, high time transaction rise has also increased. Okay, so remittances above 5 lakh accounted for 29% of the total remittance value, despite just being 1.4 of the overall transactions. Okay, so this is what is your high value of the transaction also has increased. Okay, so next one after this is transformation. So all this actually shows a transformation, because anything that actually happens geopolitically, some underlying reason will be there, right? So why there has to be a shift in the advanced countries contributing to maximum remittances? Because of the shift in the migration patterns. Okay, so India is actually witnessing a shift. Earlier, what happens? A lot of unskilled as well as temporary workers. Okay, temporary as well as a low skilled workers, they actually used to go to the Gulf region in search of jobs. But now what is happening? You have people actually going for better opportunities after finishing their either the masters over here, or they are going on site over there, or they are going to take up their higher degrees over there. So that is why people are actually moving towards the white collar jobs, that is either in administration or in the STEM field. Okay, so that is one of the reasons, and these people definitely earn higher than the income that was earlier coming into India through the other unskilled laborers, because they actually have a much more stable environment, a stable income over there, and that is why there is actually more consistent flow of remittances into India. Okay, so what is the next one? Is a policy push in the advanced economies. Okay, so there has been policy push. What do you mean by policy push? There have been change in the policies formulated by the advanced countries. For example, see, post-pandemic fiscal stimulus. Okay, so there was actually fiscal measures that were taken up by the advanced countries along with tight labor markets. Okay, and they were also paying high wages for the white collar jobs, specifically in the US as well as Europe, and this has boosted India's remittances. Okay, and also their remittance capacity of the Indian migrants. Okay, the next one is government to government frameworks are also there. For example, if you see India and UK, they have the migration and the Mobility Partnership of 2021. So this has actually eased the visa and the employment pathways for the Indian professionals. Okay, for example, if you see, Indian migration to the UK increased from around 76,000 people to around 7,50,000 people in 2023. Also one of the major reasons why we face racism over there. Okay, so how we are actually not receiving the people from other countries over here because our jobs are getting hampered, because unemployment rate is very high and everything. So this is similarly how the people abroad also face, and that is why, because of the local instability, the government sometimes takes very stern measures. Okay, next one, digitization of the remittance channel. Earlier what happened was, how the remittances actually used to reach India is that they used to send it by posts, okay, or money orders. But now what happens, they are actually sent through app. Okay, so the remittance transactions have also increased. Okay, but this, see, via digital platforms, this has actually increased. Okay, digital platforms means you have a lot of apps, and through that you have the transactions, and this digital shift has lowered the average transaction cost also. Okay, so earlier it has to be even more expensive, but now it has actually come down, and it almost costs around 4.9%, but it is still lower than the global average, that is 6.65%. okay, and then this is actually higher than the SDG target, which targets around 3% only. Okay, so this is what it is. So there has been increased ease, there has been increased speed and cost efficiency of the remittances, specifically that are inflowing into India from the high income countries like the UK as well as the US. Okay, next one, let's see the factors responsible for shift again. What are the other factors? Definitely, there are changing labor market dynamics in the Gulf also. See, the Gulf also wants to diversify the economy, rather than focusing on the construction field, rather than just the oil. They want to diversify their economy. Okay, so that is also one of the reasons. Okay, so shift from oil to knowledge and service-based economy. Service-based economy has been the focus. Okay, so what happens when there is actually a paradigm shift in the from the oil or from the traditional to more knowledge-based economy? What happens? The traditional occupation like construction as well as domestic sectors, all this actually reduces. Do you understand? That is one. Also, there are labor nationalization policies. For example, you have the kafala system over there, and also you have something called as the Nitakat system of Saudi Arabia. This is what, out of the total people you employ, almost 50% have to be from the Saudi Arabia itself. Okay, so Saudi people itself, they have to be of Saudi origin. So because of this also, the demand for the labor has actually gone down, and our people are also not going there. The next one, I told you, the kafala system. That is nothing but it is the sponsorship or the legal status of the migrant totally depends upon the employer. That is which is on a contract basis. It depends on them. So there is even sometimes, not even the basic amenities are actually fulfilled for them. So life actually is tough in these particular places. Okay, so these are also the reasons why there has been a paradigm shift. Next one is why our remittances, we saw what are remittances and what has been the status of the remittances. There has been a shift, and why, and what are the features that were, or what are the factors that were responsible for this paradigm shift. Now we will see why, first of all, remittances are important for the Indian economy. First one, it gives you the macroeconomic stability, because I told you India's remittances reached a record high of around $108 billion. Okay, so this, if you see, surprisingly has actually exceeded even the FDI, that is the foreign direct investments. Okay, so this actually acts as a shock absorber for India. Okay, where the entire global market is actually very volatile, right, of late. So that time these remittances actually act as a shock absorber. Next one, they finance nearly 50% of India's merchandise trade deficit. Oh, yeah, that is why it is a shock observer. Next one, it contributes significantly to GDP. Okay, that is remittances have come, they have been constantly accounted for 3 to 3.5 of India's GDP, and also they have outpaced, I told you, they are more than FDI as well as the official development assistance. What do you mean by official development assistance? This is nothing but it is the aid which is provided by the governments of the developed countries to support the economies of the developing countries. Okay, so our remittances have even surpassed the FDI as well as the ODA, that is the official development assistance. Next, if you see, household welfare and consumption have actually increased. Okay, basically, why do people leave their country despite the hardships and go there? Why do they? Because life is not comfortable anywhere abroad, right? But still people go there. Why? Because remittances fund critical expenses like food, education, healthcare and housing. Thus, it will improve the people or their families' living standards over here. And in Kerala, if you see, these remittances constitute around 36 to 37% of their state domestic product. Okay, this is number 4. Next one, debt sustainability and sovereignty risks. Okay, obviously when there is consistent inflow of remittances, they improve the credit rating of the country, and they also improve the marginal cost of borrowing, and hence it actually brings about financial sustainability for our country in our long run. Okay, so what do you mean by this marginal cost of borrowing? This is nothing but it is the additional cost incurred by a government or an entity in order to source or raise one extra unit of debt. Okay, so this is the importance of remittance into India or for India. So conclusion, if you see, definitely India's remittance landscape is actually undergoing a paradigm shift because there is a structural transformation that has moved towards the Western countries from the Persian country or the Arab countries, and this actually shows the upward economic stability, and we can actually see how the foreign flows are entering into India, but it also shows the vulnerabilities and how over dependence India is on this particular remittance. Okay, next one, a strategic inclusive approach is hence critical to ensure that remittances play a crucial role, okay, in the transformative development of the Indian economy. So this is what is your topic. The next important topic. So what did we read? We actually spoke about the concept of remittances. Then we actually spoke the paradigm shift that actually has happened in the landscape of remittances, where the Western countries like the US have surpassed the Gulf countries as being the source of remittances, where US alone contributes to around 27% and these combined contribute to around only 38%. And then we saw what are the reasons for such a shift. Okay, what are the reasons for such a shift? And first of all, why remittances are important for India, and finally we saw what are all the challenges, okay, because India over depends on remittances as it actually acts as an absorber of the global volatility and shocks. Finally, we saw a conclusion. Okay, so every answer in the mains exam should actually have a completion in the form of conclusion, where you have to give your rational views. It should not be biased. Okay, so next one is Lokpal gives clean chit to Madhabi in Hindenburg case. See, don't worry about this case and all. Okay, what is important for us is to understand Lokpal at the union level and Lokayukta at the state levels, because this is a topic under transparency and accountability, important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination. Now, let's move forward to see a previous year question in the year 2013. So, mains, there was a question that a national Lokpal, however strong it may be, cannot resolve the problems of immorality in public affairs discuss. So here you need to know what is immorality, what are the problems of it, and however strong or a national body the Lokpal is, why is it facing difficulties in order to in order to resolve immorality. Okay, so now let us actually see why this article is in the news. So recently this particular national body, that is Lokpal, has decided to dismiss the corruption complaints that was actually filed against the former chief of the Security and Exchange Board of India, that is the regulator of the market. Okay, so stock market regulator, in connection with the Hindenburg-Adani case, because they came up with a report stating that the market regulator has not seen the manipulation of, or has not taken any measures in with respect to the manipulation of the stocks, okay, over here, and that is when the complaints against the chief or the former chief actually sparked. Okay, but recently the Lokpal has actually decided to dismiss all those complaints as they did not qualify as cognizable offence under the Prevention of Corruption Act of 1988. Okay, so now let's move forward to see what is the background of the news. So Hindenburg Research, this is nothing but a US based short seller. What do you mean by short seller? These are all the terms that are actually used in the stock market. Okay, short seller is nothing but a person who is waiting for the shares or the stock price to fall. So what they do is that if there is a person A will be actually waiting for the stock of company. Okay, this is not a company, I'm drawing a house. Okay, stock of a company to fall. Okay, they are actually waiting for it. So first what they will do is that they will get the share of this particular company from a borrower, or they will borrow from a broker. Okay, and this they will actually get at a particular price. Now what happens? Immediately they will sell this particular share at a higher price. And then after selling it, now they actually have the higher price, and then they will actually wait for the price to actually fall, and this difference between the price that is the lower as well as the higher is actually the profit margin that these people get. So this is what is the short seller. Okay, so this is the meaning of short seller. Don't confuse too much with this. So short seller, people who are waiting for the stocks or the shares to fall, in simple words. They published a report accusing the Adani of the manipulation of stocks and accounting fraud, following which they actually sparked the global attention, and then the several complaints were actually filed against the former chief of the SEBI. Okay, do you understand? So now let us understand what is this Lokpal. So first, the Lokpal and the Lokayukta Act of 2013, it was passed. Then that recommended the establishment of Lokpal, which acts as an ombudsman. What do you mean by ombudsman? That interrogates or inquires into the complaints or the corruption allegation against the public servants. Okay, so the Lokpal and Lokayukta Act of 2013 provided for establishment of Lokpal in the union and the Lokayukta for the states. Okay, function of an ombudsman, allegation of corruption, and it has the motto, do not be greedy for anyone's wealth. Okay, so here you can actually read this the Sanskrit term over here. Okay, so historical background of the genesis of Lokpal. So this initially found its seed, okay, which was actually sown in 1809, where there was the concept of ombudsman that originated in Sweden. Okay, it originated in Sweden, and later on in the 1960s, if you actually see, there was introduction of this ombudsman concept in India, and this was proposed by our law minister Ashok Kumar Sen. Okay, so this actually happened when? In the early 1960s. And then if you actually moved forward around 1966, what happens is that after that, this ombudsman was later named as Lokpal and Lokayukta by L.M. Singhvi. Where else did you actually hear about L.M. Singhvi? Panchayati Raj. Okay, very, very important. Then in 1966, you have the Administrative Reforms Commission, that is the ARC. This recommended the establishment of Lokpal. And finally, in 2013, you have the Anna Hazare movement. Okay, so this actually led to the enactment of Lokpal as well as the Lokayukta Act of 2013. So I told you, the Lokpal, it's an ombudsman, interrogates or inquires into the corruption complaints against the public servants. Now, let us see the selection committee. Very, very important. Please do understand. Look, this was asked in the 2025 examination, that is 3 days back. Okay, so the selection committee includes the Prime Minister. Okay, so it has a chairperson and it has 8 other members. Okay, so this is what, did I miss that in the previous one? No. Okay, so let us actually see, the chairperson is the Prime Minister, not the President. Remember, Prime Minister is the chairperson, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the leader of the opposition for checks and balances. Then, do you have Chief Justice of India? Yes, you have Chief Justice of India or a judge nominated by him or one eminent jurist appointed by the President. So very, very important. First you have the Prime Minister, then you actually have the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, and then you actually have the leader of opposition. This itself is a controversial thing because Prime Minister and leader of Lok Sabha, what does that mean? They belong to the same political party, right? Then how can you actually raise complaint against a sitting member, that is in case if it is the Prime Minister? So that itself is a question. Anyways, for leader of opposition is also there. You have a Chief Justice of India or an eminent jurist appointed by the President. So these are all the people. Okay, moving forward, if you see structure of the Lokpal, it is multi-member. I told you, consists of one chairperson, this is the Prime Minister, and a maximum of 8 members. So chairperson of the Lokpal should be either the, 1 minute. Okay, the selection commission, the selection committee has the Prime Minister as a chairperson. Okay, whereas if you see here, the chairperson of the Lokpal, the chairperson of the Lokpal should be either the former Chief Justice of India or a former judge of the Supreme Court. This time the question was, it is only the Chief Justice who has been retired of India alone. Okay, but then it also includes the judge of the Supreme Court or an eminent person with integrity and outstanding ability who have a very, very fair knowledge and expertise for a minimum period of 25 years in the matters of anti-corruption policy, then public administration, vigilance, as well as other matters like banking, law and management. These are financial matters. Okay, so this is actually the structure. So out of the maximum 8 members, what to say, 4 of them will be what? Judicial members, and 50% of the members minimum will be from SC, ST, OBC, minorities and women. Okay, so that there is actually equitable distribution of this particular post or the representation. Next one, the judicial member of the Lokpal is either a former judge of the Supreme Court or the former Chief Justice of a High Court. Okay, very important, and the term is for 5 years or till the age of 70. The term of office of the Lokpal chairman and the members is the same. Okay, 5 or 70, not 6, 5 or 70. Jurisdiction is, so who are all the persons, the complaints against which it can actually inquire into? It also includes the Prime Minister, the ministers, the member of parliaments, and who are the officers? Group A, then you have B, C, D, government employees. Okay, its jurisdiction also, it actually scrutinizes the foreign funds under FCRA, that is Foreign Contribution and Regulation Act, okay, exceeding 10 lakhs of money. And superintendents, it has the superintendents and directs any investigative agency, including the Central Bureau of Investigation for the cases that are referred to it by the Lokpal. Okay, so this is what it is. Now let's move forward to understand the third article. Okay, so what does the POCSO Act entail? This is very important. And how has Supreme Court diverted from the POCSO in the recent judgment? Okay, so let us actually see. Recently, in the around a week back, the Supreme Court declined to impose a sentence to a man who was convicted of POCSO, who was convicted under POCSO. Okay, noting that the victim did not commit any kind of a heinous crime as mentioned under POCSO. So this is what we'll be seeing. So here we will actually understand the POCSO Act, and then this actually comes under GS paper 2, welfare schemes, or no, under GS paper 2 this is under governance. Again, welfare schemes for the vulnerable section of the population where you have children and women, okay, and the body is constituted and the laws regulated for that. Okay, so here is the POCSO Act. Now let's move forward and understand the previous year question in 2016. So here the mains question was, examine the main provisions of the National Child Policy and throw light on the status of its implementation. Okay, National Child Policy. So anything related to child, women and other vulnerable sections like the disabled, the old, all that become important. Okay, the senior citizens and all. So now let us see what is the context. So don't go too much into the news, just understand what is the POCSO Act. Recently on May 23, the Supreme Court declined to impose sentence on a man who was convicted under the POCSO Act. Okay, the court actually held that this particular incident, what happened is that a child went missing in the year 2018. So after few years, what happened? It has been found that the child also had a baby. The child itself was a minor, but she had a baby after marrying a 25-year-old man. That is why the mother put a case on the man under POCSO. Now, Supreme Court has actually said, no, whom are you putting the case against? Because the incident did not qualify as criminal offense in strict legal terms. Okay, so this has actually raised concerns on the ruling of the Supreme Court, stating that is it deviating from what does the provisions of the POCSO Act entail? So this is what is the question. Now let us see what is the POCSO Act. So this was a legislation that came into existence in 2012. Okay, so this happened to be India's first comprehensive law in order to specifically address the issue of sexual abuse of children. Very, very important. Why is this important for India? Because India has earlier ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1992. See here, UN Convention on Rights of the Child. So this emphasizes on the protection of children from any kind of sexual abuse as well as exploitation. Okay, so this is why this POCSO was enacted, and who administers that? This is Ministry of Women and Child Development. Don't think Ministry of Home Affairs. It is Ministry of Women and Child Development, and the legal assistance is provided by the Ministry of Law and Justice. Okay, now let's move forward and understand what are the other provisions. What is the definition of a child? Any child, see, it is a gender neutral thing. Okay, it is gender neutral. So here child doesn't mean it is a female, does not necessarily mean it can be boy child also. Do you understand? So the Act defines child as any person below the age of 18 years, and this is gender neutral, recognizing that both boys and girls can be victims of sexual abuse. Next one, the special courts. As per the Act, there have to be special courts which have to be established. Okay, and the trials should be completed within a period of 1 year. Next one, there has to be mandatory reporting. That is, apart from the victim, if any other person is aware of such an incident, you have to definitely report, and failure to do so is also punishable by law under the POCSO Act. Okay, next one, punishment for the offenders. So there has been in 2019, this actually came into existence when? When did it come? When POCSO came into existence? We saw in 2012. Then after 7 years, the need for serious punishments was actually realized. That is why in 2019 there were amendments that were brought to the Act, which even included death penalty for penetrative sexual assault for children below the age of 12 years. Even death penalty can be given to such people. Okay, so that is what it said. Now moving forward, the next provision is that no time limit for reporting. So people will say, no, retrospective, it happened 20 years back, why are you reporting? No, if I had actually undergone an abuse when I was a child, now after becoming an adult, I can now go and question and put that person into serious trouble. So there is no time limit for reporting. Okay, so there is no period of limitation for reporting a case. Next one, it actually ensures, this particular act actually ensures that you are not supposed to release, or you are not allowed to disclose any kind of identity of the victim. Okay, so that you protect the child's privacy and prevents them from being further victimized. So the case in question, not important. Okay, we can actually skip this. So now let's move to the next article, that is the deputy speaker. Okay, so here the office of deputy speaker is actually vacant, and this has not only been the case of the 18th, that is the current Lok Sabha, but also in the case of the 17th. Okay, it has been empty. So now we need to understand the office of deputy speaker, which is important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination, under appointment to various constitutional posts, the powers, the functions and responsibilities of various constitutional bodies. If you see, in 2020 there has been a question in your mains examination, once a speaker, always a speaker. So do you think the practice should be adopted to impart objectivity to the office of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, and what could be its implication for the robust functioning of parliamentary business in India? Very, very important. So the office of Speaker becomes very, very important, and more than knowing the role of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, you actually have to put your thoughts and words to paper and try attempting these questions which are shown on the presentation, because prelims of course is actually a screening process, but mains is the real game changer. These kind of analytical questions actually will demand a lot of time, but you have to complete the writing of the answer within 8 to 9 minutes in order to complete your entire paper. That is why you cannot beat about the bush. This is not your college semester. You cannot write in your own words also. So it needs an complete and holistic preparation and understanding of the topic linked to current affairs. Okay, so the prolonged vacancy of the post of the deputy speaker has raised significant concerns. Why? Because it poses a question about the erosion of the constitutional practices as well as parliamentary norms. So let us actually see, because if you see Article 93 of the Constitution actually says that the House of the People definitely have to elect two people, that is, one is the speaker, next is the deputy speaker, and it actually gives the functions also that they have to perform. So in that case, if you do not, what does that mean? Okay, so here let's see more on the news. The 17th Lok Sabha, that was from 2019 to 2024, and the 18th Lok Sabha, that is the current one, have failed to appoint a deputy speaker, and this is very unprecedented in India's democratic history. So the delay, this represents the erosion of what? The constitutional practice, as well as represents a constitutional anomaly and the weakness of parliamentary checks and balances. In emergencies, that is, in case there is a vacancy or the vacuum because of the death or the resignation of the speaker, then who else will actually perform the functions? Okay, so this will result, so only deputy speaker has to actually take up the responsibility. If that person is absent, or even if that person or the office is actually vacant, then it leads to parliamentary paralysis. So this is what is this article. Now let us understand what is the constitutional mandate and the role of a deputy speaker in Indian Parliament. Okay, so Article 93 actually says that the House of the People, that is the Lok Sabha, okay, Lok Sabha, as soon as may be, can choose two members, or may choose, as may be choose, they have to choose two members of the House to be the speaker as well as the deputy speaker. So as soon as may be, that means it's very urgent, and it doesn't mean you can take your own sweet time. It is not the meaning that it is your discretion. Okay, so this actually conveys the urgency and it is not the discretion. Next one, the post is a mandatory constitutional requirement, okay, and it is actually not a matter of your political convenience, okay, very important. Next one, Article 94. This actually says the role of the deputy speaker. The deputy speaker will hold office until he or she resigns or cease to be a member of the parliament or are removed by a resolution passed by majority of all the members of the house, okay. So this is what Article 94 actually says, and Article 95 actually says that in case the Speaker of the House is absent or has resigned, or the death or removal of the Speaker has actually occurred, then Deputy Speaker performs the duties of the Speaker. And also there is Rule 8 as per the conduct of business in Lok Sabha. It actually says when the office of Deputy Speaker is vacant, then the Speaker nominates a panel of chairpersons to preside, okay. So these are all the constitutional provisions with respect to the office of the Deputy Speaker. Historical evolution, if you see, first of all, in the colonial era, it originated in the Central Legislative Assembly. See, Central Legislative Assembly, and the Deputy Speaker was called as the Deputy President, okay, and under the British India, and the first person or the Deputy Speaker or the Deputy President was Sachinanand Sinha. Who was it? Sachinanand Sinha. So this was in 1921. Post-independence, what happened? This position of the Deputy Speaker was actually retained by the Constituent Assembly before the full adoption of the Constitution in 1950. Then the first Deputy Speaker, this post came into existence in 1952, and it was M.A. Iyengar. M.A. Iyengar, who was the first Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Okay, this happened in 1952. Understood? So now let's move forward to the suggestion of reforms to this void or the vacuum that is actually there. You have to tighten the constitutional language, that is in the way that constitution actually puts things into force. You have to tighten that, okay. So introduce a specific time frame, that is within 60 days of the first sitting you have to appoint the speaker and the deputy speaker, okay. So this is what you need to say. And then the statutory intervention actually has to be given, okay. Create a mandate that the election of the deputy speaker within a fixed period is a compulsion, is a necessity. Next one, empower the president to intervene, okay, on the advice of the on advice from the prime minister and the speaker if it is delayed, if the appointment of the deputy speaker is delayed. And finally, restore the conventions, okay. So these are all the suggestions for reforms, again not important for the prelims but important for the mains, okay. So you have to offer the post sometimes even to the opposition in order to strengthen, okay, the cooperation between the ruling and the opposition party. Let us now solve the mains practice question. So give an account of the recent changing trends in the remittance inflows to India and highlight the key factors which are responsible for the shift, and it's a 10 marker where you'll have to answer in 150 words, okay. So the introduction should be, what do you mean by the remittances? These are the financial transfers that are actually made by the people who live abroad to their home countries, okay. And India happens to be the top global recipient because it has surpassed many other, it has actually surpassed the mark of $115 billion, okay, which is even 4 to 5 times, or it has doubled compared to that of the 2016 levels, okay. So this is what you need to say. And moving forward, you have to talk about how much we actually received and which is the country that contributes to the major, and then talk about the major shift that has happened. What are the reasons for the major shift, about the migratory patterns as well as the laws that are being formulated by these countries, okay. And then you have to talk about the conclusion. Here you have to say this kind of shift is actually happening because the migration, because the migration patterns have been evolving and India's workforce is also skilled. That is why they are going abroad for better opportunities, that is white collar jobs where they are paid more and kind of a stable environment and a stable revenue, income is actually there for them, okay. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, let us solve the MCQs of the topics that we discussed yesterday. So consider the following statements regarding the Padma Awards. So government servants including doctors and scientists are not eligible for Padma Awards. No, doctors and scientists are eligible. Only the government servants, they are not eligible. So first one is wrong. Next one, Padma Awards are announced annually on the occasion of Independence Day. Is it Independence Day? No, it is Republic Day. You need to know these details, okay? Because recently it was asked that regarding BRICS or BIMSTEC. Yeah, I think BIMSTEC. It was actually established by was it BRICS or BIMSTEC? I don't remember. BRICS, I think. Yeah, it was actually by the Bangkok Declaration of 1999, or the the BIMSTEC actually came into existence when. So the years are also being tweaked. Okay, so you need to know about it. So this is also wrong. Padma Shri is the highest category among the Padma Awards. No, you have the Padma Vibhushan higher than the Padma Bhushan, which is higher, and finally only is the Padma Shri. So this is also wrong. So none of the above is the correct answer. Answer is D. Next, moving forward. How many of the following countries operate the 5th generation fighter jets? Yes, yesterday we saw, right? The fighter jets are classified based on the sophistication of technology that is deployed, okay, in their development. So India is currently developing that AMAC. We saw this one, and then we have Russia here, we have United States and China, only 3. Okay, so here your answer is B. Don't think India has already developed it. We are in the pursuit of development. Next one, the last question. Madden-Julian oscillation, sometimes seen in news, is related to. Is it a global financial framework proposed by the IMF? No, not at all. Next one, a periodic eastward moving atmospheric distribution. Yes, influencing the tropical weather and the rainfall. This is also one of the major changes that actually has an impact on the onset of southwest monsoon in India. That is why Kerala received rainfall in the last week of May itself. Okay, otherwise it's the 1st of June where the monsoon actually hits the Kerala coast. Okay. Next, these are the questions with reference to today's discussion, that is Lokpal and Lokayukta. Next is POCSO, and finally is the Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. So with this, we are actually done with our discussion for the daily news analysis. I hope you actually enjoyed it, and these questions we request you to solve on the website, that is the Narayana Navigator website, and we will actually discuss these also. After you take up the test on the website, we will actually discuss these tomorrow, so that this will actually help you introspect and understand the gaps that you actually have in your in the takeaway from today's class. If you actually enjoyed this particular session, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you so much. We'll meet you in another live session tomorrow. Thank you.